All right, let's get into it. We spend so much time looking up at the sun and the wind for our clean energy. But what if the biggest, most reliable, and just most powerful source of clean energy has been right under our feet this entire time? We're going to talk about how engineers are literally tapping into the planet's core to turn the Earth itself into a giant, never-ending battery. But first, to really get why this is such a potential game changer, we have to talk about the big, unspoken problem with our favorite green energy sources. There's a gap we need to fill. So I'll ask you this. What is the single biggest flaw in solar and wind? It's the one thing that keeps grid operators up at night, the one catch that comes with these otherwise incredible power sources. Any ideas? Well, it's that they're intermittent. They're not always on. The sun sets, right? The wind dies down, and that creates this huge mismatch between when we're making power and when we actually need it most. Experts call this the duck curve, and it's a massive headache. They're powerful, for sure, but they're just not consistent. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, what about batteries? And yeah, you're right. Batteries are great for bridging a gap for a few hours. But what about when you have a week of cloudy, calm weather? Storing that much energy for days or weeks on end is still wildly expensive and takes a ton of resources. We need something clean that is always on. And that brings us to the main event, unlocking the absolutely immense, constant heat that's just radiating from the Earth's core. We're talking about a power source that never, ever switches off. See, for decades, geothermal has kind of been a niche player. And that's because the old school way of doing it required hitting a geological jackpot. You had to find a very specific spot where you had intense heat, you had water, and you had porous rock, all naturally happening in the same place. Think Iceland. It's amazing when you find it, but those spots are incredibly rare. And this is where the big leap happens, with what's called Enhanced Geothermal Systems, or EGS. The old way meant finding that perfect spot. The EGS way says, forget that. The heat is pretty much everywhere. We just need to find the heat, and we can engineer the rest. We can create our own reservoir almost anywhere on the planet. So how does it actually work? Well, the concept is brilliantly simple. First, you drill a couple of wells, deep down, like miles down, into super hot, dry rock, like granite. Second, you pump water down to open up tiny, existing fractures in the rock, basically creating a giant underground radiator. Third, you circulate cold water down one of the wells. It gets superheated as it flows through that rock radiator. And finally, that piping hot water comes back up the second well, turns into steam, and spins a turbine to generate electricity 24/7, 365. Of course, simple in concept does not mean easy in practice. Doing this takes us to the absolute frontier of engineering. We're talking about drilling into conditions that are, well, frankly, they're hellish. Okay, so the first huge problem is the rock itself. You see, we're not drilling through soft dirt here. We're trying to bore through miles of granite and basalt, which are some of the hardest substances on the planet. Standard drills you'd use for oil and gas, they just get chewed up and spit out. On top of that, it's scorching hot down there, over 300 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead and instantly fry the delicate electronics you need to steer the drill. But this is where the incredible innovation is happening right now. You've got companies redesigning drill bits with industrial diamonds, using powerful hammer drills that just pulverize the rock. And then you have the really sci-fi stuff like plasma torches and millimeter waves that can literally vaporize rock without even touching it. And to beat the heat, they're developing hardened electronics and putting them inside what are basically super high-tech thermoses to keep them cool. Now, I know whenever you hear about injecting water deep underground to fracture rock, a really big question pops into your head. So let's just tackle that one head on. It's the elephant in the room, right? Is enhanced geothermal just a cleaner-sounding name for the kind of hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, that the oil and gas industry uses? And the answer is no, not really. While the process sounds a bit similar, the goal is totally different. Gas fracking uses a cocktail of chemicals to blast the rock apart to release trapped gas. EGS uses almost entirely plain water, and the goal isn't to break the rock open, it's just to create a closed-loop plumbing system, that radiator we talked about, to circulate water and harvest heat. It's a different game. Look, the industry learned a really hard lesson from a project in Switzerland back in 2006 that caused some minor earthquakes. But today's projects are a world apart. They use these incredibly sensitive monitors to basically listen to the rock 24/7. And they have what's called a stoplight system. If they detect even the tiniest vibrations crossing a very low threshold, they immediately slow down or stop altogether. It's all about safety first. So, with the risks being managed, what's the reward? Well, the US Department of Energy has put out this huge challenge, this moonshot goal. Get the cost of EGS down to just $45 per megawatt hour. If they can hit that number, it becomes just as cheap as natural gas, solar, and wind. And here's the beautiful part of the economics. Yeah, the drilling is super expensive up front. It's a huge capital investment. But once you've built it, your fuel, that incredible heat from the Earth's core, is constant, it's reliable, and it is completely free, forever. So, with the tech getting better and the costs hopefully coming down, what does the future of this actually look like? How do you scale this up and build a whole new kind of power grid? Probably the best way to describe what's happening right now is this. Enhanced Geothermal is having a SpaceX moment. You've got this wave of really ambitious startups, backed by serious private money, all jumping in to solve these hard engineering problems and pushing the tech forward faster than anyone thought possible. I mean, you have companies like Fervo Energy, which took horizontal drilling techniques from the oil industry, and they are already powering Google's data centers in Nevada. You've got an MIT spinoff called Quasi Energy, developing those crazy millimeter wave drills to go deeper than anyone has ever drilled before. And then there's Avor, which is building a totally sealed, radiator-like system that avoids some of the earthquake risks entirely. And besides being on all the time, one of the most incredible things about geothermal is its tiny, tiny footprint. I mean, just look at this. A geothermal plant that makes the same amount of juice as a massive solar or wind farm takes up just 1% of the land. It is an unbelievably power-dense source of energy. And the benefits just keep coming. EGS uses way fewer critical minerals like lithium and cobalt than batteries or solar panels do. The water it uses is just recycled over and over in a closed loop. And maybe one of the coolest parts is that you can retrofit old coal plants. All that expensive stuff, the turbines, the connections to the grid, it's already there. You just swap out the coal boiler for a new one powered by free heat from the earth. You know, when you start putting all these pieces together, it's on 24/7, it has a tiny footprint, you can build it almost anywhere. You really start to understand why some people are calling this the holy grail of clean energy. It promises the kind of scale you get from nuclear, but with virtually no emissions or waste. So really, when you boil it all down, the takeaway is this. This immense source of clean power is there. It's waiting for us, just a few miles down. The engineering challenges are huge, but the tools are getting better and smarter every single day. So the ultimate question isn't really if we can do this. It's how fast can we get good at breaking the rock.